Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. Tonight is Thursday the 24th of January 2018. Tonight's topic: cryptos in the time of a bear market and government shutdown. We're going to go through some of the most recent developments in the bear market and also how the government shutdown is impacting certain crypto projects that are supposed to be game changers. All right, well, let's take a look now. Before we go on, we're going to take a look at the gold and silver prices, the equity prices, the crypto prices, a little look at China, and some news of the day. So let's take first, we always start with gold and silver, and they were relatively uneventful today. But we're going to go through what happened in the gold and silver markets today, and we will see the gold price was down a little bit. Gold price went down $1.59, or pretty much flat, but indeed in the red, down 0.12%, closing at 1280.95, and that's pretty much where it is at the moment in after hours trading. Moving on over to the silver price of the day, and silver also down a little bit, went down a nickel, down to $15.30, and that's where it is right now. Relatively little movement in the silver market today. What did that do for the gold-silver ratio? Unsustainable. Well, of course, it didn't change much. Went up a little bit. Went up to 83.70. So today was an uneventful day in the gold and silver market, and I would say it was a fairly uneventful day in the equities market as well, with the Dow Jones down just 22 points, or 0.09%, essentially flat. NASDAQ was up 47 points. That was actually good for a 0.68% rise to 7,073. And the S&P 500 up just 3.63 points, or up 0.14% to 2642. So the gold and silver markets, the equity markets, not much happened. Some other gold and silver news, though, I do want to cover. Gold demand in India appears to be heading down, so does silver. Not sure if these are official numbers. This could be just a brokerage. Could be looking at jewelry numbers. But we will get the... I like to use the import numbers from the government of India, especially for gold, to gauge gold demand, because they don't really have any gold mines there. Silver demand, I also can somewhat measure from imports, but they do have a lot of secondary supply there, and they do have their own silver mining production, so it's not as succinct of a measure of gold demand just looking at imports, but it is instructive as well, and we'll get that in due course. In the next week or two we'll cover Indian gold and silver demand. Ireland, well, Seamus would be happy to hear about this one then. Over in Galway, yes indeed, they discovered a new gold zone at the Clarence Stream project. Now, who would be thinking that Ireland would be having gold being found after all the leprechauns have run through Ireland stealing all the gold? Well, yes indeed, they're still finding it out there in the Emerald Island, and I'm going to have to get myself over there, because if they've got gold in Galway, well, you know Seamus is going to be on his way. Well, there you go. So Galway finding some gold. That's kind of a new development in the last 5 years. That area, they've been finding some decent amounts of gold. As we mentioned, or Seamus mentioned, Ireland is not necessarily famous for its gold mining, but they're picking it up. Silver mining. Fresnillo, world's largest primary silver producer, Mexico's #2 gold company, expects production to fall this year, but keep in mind, last year was a record year for Fresnillo, and they expect it to fall to 58 to 61 million ounces. That's pretty good, because overall production is about 820, 830 million. So they're in a, I don't know, quick back of the envelope. They're under 10%, but they're clearly within upper single digits if you've got, 58 out of 820 million. So they got about 7%, 7-8% of the overall world's mining production in silver. So that'll be down this year. Indeed, I would say that the declining productions, especially in gold, as evidenced by or the anticipated declines in production, as evidenced by all these mergers we've been talking about amongst the first, second, third, and fourth gold mining companies in the world, that to me indicates, and they've said it too, that it's getting expensive and they feel they can join up with other mines and maximize their profits, not necessarily their production. However, given that new mining production has been at a record the last 7-8 years, and that new mining production only adds a single-digit, very small single-digit percentage to overall gold supplies, it's not that big of a deal, but it is a big deal macro over the next 20 to 30 years if they don't come up with either less expensive ways of finding gold or a much higher gold price. Eventually, as more and more people, we assume the demand stays relative per capita to the world, meaning that as the world grows in population, especially in China and India, and the relative economic output stays the same, meaning that they can afford to buy gold and silver, then that may strain the demand. Remember, the bulk of demand for gold and silver is not from stackers because they're worried about dollar collapse, yuan collapse. It's actually a result of the wealth effect. Indians, Chinese, the last 20 years now have yuan and rupee in their pocket. They have money. They like gold. They like silver. It is a display or an ostentation of wealth that they like to have. They're not necessarily stacking because they saw a YouTube video saying that something was going to collapse. So actually, for gold demand and silver demand, and that gold and silver is in the form of silverware and jewelry. And in China, it's only mostly gold that they buy, and in India, it's both gold and silver. And for that demand to keep going, you need to have good times, not bad times. Good times drives the silver demand in India and gold demand in China and gold demand in India. Good times also drive silver industrial demand. Without more electronics, more solar panels being built, production of all the new useful items for silver, those items don't get produced if economic times are not good. So my thesis is good economic times, especially in the growing Asian economies, is good for gold and silver, not dollar collapse, end of dollar hegemony, game changer, and all that stuff. Because as we've seen, the amount of gold that is bought in the United States is very low compared to the amount of gold that is bought in China and India, even though we showed the other night that U.S. gold demand is actually third in the world. But again, that's jewelry. You look at the U.S. Mint numbers, it's not from buying gold eagle coins and certainly not from buying American gold buffalo coins. What else have we got in the gold and silver markets here? Yes, Philippines. Central banks are buying gold. That is all I need to know. Well, here you go. Philippines press release. This is a bill. Now, this isn't necessarily in stone yet. Bill aiming to increase the Philippine gold reserves, passed on second reading. So it looks like Philippines may be back in the market to buy gold. You'll add them now to, up until the last 2 or 3 years, the only countries that were adding gold as a central bank proposition were Russia, Kazakhstan, and China. And actually China stopped. People's Bank of China stopped between 2016 and 2018. They bought in December of 2018. Russia and Kazakhstan really were the only central banks that were buying gold at all. And in 2018, Poland, India, Turkey might have, but Turkey was buying in 17 and probably selling a bit in 2018. Hungary added to the countries that were adding gold. But again, the bulk of the gold that was bought by central banks was bought by Russia. Probably 75-80% of all central bank buying was Russia, and then throw in Kazakhstan. Between the two of them was about 90%. And even so, what Russia bought, 262 tons of gold in 2018, a record for that nation, was they probably mined 300 tons of it themselves. You know, that's less than 10% of the overall gold mining production in the world. So the bulk of the world's gold doesn't go to central banks. People like to look at central banks as buying gold as being a significant piece of the demand. It's not. It's a significant piece of perhaps central bank allocating of resources and reserves, but it's not a major source of demand. As I mentioned, the biggest source of demand is coming from jewelry, and mostly from Asian countries. All right, what else do we got in gold and silver? Silver mining. And yeah, we'll cover that later. Okay, let's move on now to some news of the day. Now, a couple of things on the wall. There were a couple of votes. None of this passed to try to give Trump money for the wall. Other bills trying to pass that would not give money for the wall. Doesn't matter. Trump's not signing anything without money for the wall. And the Senate bill actually didn't even pass with money for the wall. But we have just breaking news of the last hour or so that you got to consider the source here. This is a CNN exclusive. They say, I say consider the source, but for what it's worth, White House preparing draft national emergency order has identified $7 billion for the wall. Now, this doesn't seem too far-fetched, given that I think both sides have dug their heels in knowing that it's not going to last forever, this government shutdown. Dems are saying no wall because they want to appeal to their side, saying, hey, we said no wall, no wall, no wall, and we never gave in. And Trump wants to say wall, 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 and we never gave in. Now, if that were to go on, and that was really the only options we've had, that would not be the options. They both sides know that Trump can pull this emergency funding thing, and so for CNN to jump the gun here, trying to get an exclusive, they may have information. They probably don't. I doubt that Trump's people leaked it to CNN, but they could be, as Dan Rather says, directionally correct. Eventually, since I don't see either side giving in on this, especially after today's vote, Trump is going to pull the emergency card and try to get the wall built that way. And of course, you know, someone in the Ninth Circuit is going to challenge it and put an injunction out. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. The real interesting fun is going to happen if he does pull this emergency order. That doesn't necessarily mean that the government gets reopened. Trump could sit back and say, I still want you to put into a budget that I'll sign some additional monies for the wall or something else. And the other thing he's going to do, excuse me, even if he doesn't ask for more money for the wall, he may reject any funding for the Dreamers. This is why I said it's a mistake for the Democrats. Really what they should do is they should negotiate for, on behalf of their immigrant clients, some type of exchange for the wall. Because what's going to happen is they're not going to get those things if he gets the wall some other way. But Nancy knows what she's doing, so we'll leave her to her negotiating tactics. All right, anything else now? Let's see. Yes, indeed. We have China. Yes, China. China always comes up, and we're going to mention China again today. Now, the markets, I guess, didn't rise today. You know, I say they go up because of the Trump pump and the Powell put. The other thing that makes them go up is any type of rumor or a report that China and the United States are coming close to a deal, and therefore you might as well just buy stocks because there's no other worries out there. The only issue is whether this Chinese-U.S. issue gets solved, and if there's any news that it might be on the verge of getting resolved, then the market goes higher. But didn't really look like there's a deal out there. There's been conflicting. You hear all through the day. Commerce Secretary says U.S. and China is still far away. Then Mnuchin comes out and says, well, we're close. Maybe we'll have a deal. Maybe we'll have a meeting. This kind of back and forth, I guess it keeps the markets on an even keel. But if you get something that appears to be credible to the market that they're going to solve this, then the stock market goes much higher. Now, today I saw something that was interesting from our friend Santiago Capital. He made an interesting point here. He says, I know everyone likes to focus on the USA and our debt, but to get an idea of the size of the credit expansion in China, just consider the fact that even if they had 10 times the amount of gold they say they do, which is one of the gold pumper stories, they got more gold than they say they have, they're lying. And I always point out they're not lying. It's just that the gold isn't at the People's Bank of China. Sure, there's all that gold in China, but when you say China's gold, you have to clarify the difference between People's Bank of China and China. And he says they would still need $40,000 gold price to back their M2 money supply. Now, of course, this is a point I've been making for more than 2 years, back in the height of the gold back yuan game changer story in September 2017. I wrote a blog post and did the research, very similar to what Santiago Capital just put out, that was entitled, Can China's Gold Save It from Debt Collapse? And back then, I said, no way, Jose. At the time, the debt was 28 trillion. It's not like 45 trillion, and a lot of that's non-performing. And what I had done was I pulled out the People's Bank of China's gold, the number of tons that they have. You really can't see it here, but I'll just run through it quickly. And what the value of that gold is at the current price. Back then, it's the same price now, about $1,300. And back then, it was only worth $78 billion. That's not going to cover $40 trillion worth of debt. Oh, but what if it was worth $10,000 or $15,000? Yeah, you might get up to about, if you 10x the price of gold from 13K to, from 1.3K, meaning $1,300 to 13K, well, then you'd have $780 billion. That's not going to cover your $40 trillion. Well, then I added in your Hong Kong imports over the last 15 years, your Chinese mining over the last 15 years, some Shanghai imports, and I said, okay, we'll give them that they got 20 times more gold. Maybe they got 20,000 tons of gold. Okay, well, at current price is at $1,300 an ounce. That still doesn't even get you $1 trillion. It gets you about $800 billion. It only gets you close to $8 trillion when it's at $13,000. So very similar exercise that I ran through a year and a half ago that Santiago Capital just ran through. He compared it to the M2 money supply versus their gold. I compared it to their debt. Same concept, that basically they've been going on and on and on about the United States has debt, but China has gold. No, China has gold, but they have enormous amounts of debt. And that also presupposes that the United States doesn't have the gold that it has. A very classic gold pumper story. U.S. bad, China good. U.S. has no gold. U.S. is lazy. China works. China saves. China good. China has gold. Yeah, they leave out China has massive amounts of debt. Debt beyond your wildest imagination. A lot of it non-performing. And even if they have the gold they say they have, the United States also says they have a lot of gold. But people in America that are gold bugs, they want to believe that China's got the gold, United States doesn't, and that the United States is just a big U.S. debt Ponzi scheme, but that China somehow is some type of paragon of sound money. And as our friend Santiago Capital points out, everyone likes to focus on the USA and our debt. But to get an idea of the size of the credit expansion in China, just consider the fact that even if they have 10x the amount of gold they do, they still need a $40,000 gold price to back their M2. Not going to happen. So his research updates mine. It makes it even worse that they need an even higher gold price now that they've expanded as far as they have into credit, and it's expanding every day. Every day we hear China needs to do more stimulus. They need to put more money into the stock market. They got to do more subsidies, more tax credits. And again, it doesn't, what I've been saying for years now is stop focusing on the US dollar. Yes, admit that the United States has a debt problem, but admit there's a bigger problem. The world is awash in debt. It's not just the United States. And the United States is probably in a better position to withstand any type of financial calamity or debt collapse than China is. All right, let's now get into the topic of the evening, and then we're going to get into some comments from last night. Last night we had an interesting discussion about the only chart you needed to know. I put everything that if you want to know over the last 10 years, the reasons to buy gold, according to many of these charts, I put it all in one chart. Some people were offended. I don't know why. I think I did them a favor. I do have to apologize, though. I did forget to put in Shemitah. Shemitah was a big deal for about 6 to 8 months. That was a major reason, and that comes up every, 7, 8 years. So Shemitah is very important. I also left out central banks are buying gold. That is all I need to know. I did leave that one out too, but that's a very important reason to buy gold according to those narratives. So when I update that chart and put it out again, I will make sure I add Shemitah to central banks are buying gold, along with the others. What were some of the other ones that we had there? If you look at the stunning chart we listed last night, before we get to our topic here, some people said they couldn't read it, but JP Morgan was buying silver, and they were buying silver eagles and silver maples. That was a good reason. COMEX default imminent. We've heard that countless times over the last 8, 9 years. Dollar collapse, end of the petrodollar, QE4 is coming, negative interest rates coming, gold silver ratio unsustainable, silver shortage, gold back yuan, petro yuan, commercials are going long silver, first time ever in 40 years, sovereign size gold buy coming, and now we add Shemitah, and central banks are buying gold. And that is all you need to know. That chart should give anybody who thinks that people should buy gold, there's all your reasons, because the ultimate conclusion on the chart is both silver and gold are set to skyrocket, and therefore you need to buy gold or silver. I think I did everyone who is in that camp a great service. I should have charged for it, so now they have it in one place. They don't have to go bouncing around looking at old videos and watching countless videos. They just have to go to that one stunning chart that screams buy gold in silver. Okay, now we're going to move over to cryptos, which some people who like gold and silver hate when I do, but I'm sorry. I am an analyst. That is what I do. I don't say how the world should be according to me and then make all my decisions. I look at what the world is doing, and I try to keep an objective eye on it. And I think these are the reasons that we've heard. The main reasons that people get excited about gold and silver have been, if there's any more, I think these are the ones that you're looking at right now on your screen. But now I'm going to go through, and then we're going to discuss your views on both the gold silver markets and as well as the crypto markets. We're going to talk about cryptos in the time of this bear market, and also how this government shutdown is impacting cryptocurrencies. Uh-oh, we got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
All right, let's go back to 2013. In 2013, I started covering cryptocurrencies in earnest. And I made a lot of the arguments that are now commonplace amongst people who trash cryptocurrencies. Anyone can do it. You can make more than just Bitcoin. It didn't have any intrinsic value. Why would anybody want it? You could buy stuff without cryptos. The current means of payment were more than adequate. And so what? That you were able to create this trustless environment in this, what I conceived as a contrived ecosystem. But the price rocketed in 2013 while I was making all these comments. And it went from like $110 up to like $1,000. And I thought, well, this is a mania, this is a bubble, your typical reaction, because from my perspective, having seen it all and been following gold and silver and following economics, understanding bubbles, understanding that money, in my mind, had to go back to something that was of value before it became money, using the gold and silver example, that gold and silver were desirable before they were money. They became money because people realize that, well, I want that, just like you may want a lot of things, but the good thing about gold and silver and why they became money was you can actually divide them up and give people smaller amounts. Horses are valuable, but you can't, you could trade for a horse, but it doesn't make good money unless you're talking about, with livestock, actually cutting it into component parts and then selling it as meat. But even there, you don't have the durability. It doesn't last that long. Gold and silver became perfect money because pre-digital times, nothing was better to divide up into small amounts, little half ounces, quarter ounces, tenth of an ounce pieces of gold and silver. Served very well as a medium of exchange. And you knew when you had that money in your hand, you actually had something that you'd want anyway. You'd want to have gold because it was pretty, you could use it, you could make jewelry out of it. You knew silver had a certain value. So that's why gold and silver became money. And I was of the view that money was something that had to have value in advance of it becoming a medium of exchange. And that's just how I thought about it. So Bitcoin comes along and they claim it's money right off the bat. And I said, no, it's not, because it has no value other than you passing it around. And in my mind, I didn't see anybody wanting to do that other than the people that were fanatic about it, because I had no use for it. I wasn't going to go out and buy Bitcoin so I could buy stuff at a store, and which store is going to accept it? So why would I put my money into, or my cash into Bitcoin? What was I going to do with it? Well, it's going to go higher. Well, that's different. That's a speculative investment. I can buy a biotech stock or something. So I was not a big fan of cryptocurrencies. Didn't like them at all. Now, from 2013, then at the end of the year, it was very similar to the end of 2017. The price just fell, and I was very smugly saying to myself, "Oh yeah, because it's stupid, and it's a scam. You know, Bitcoin is just useless. It's just these lunatics that are running around trying to get it off the ground." And that's how I viewed it. I said, because there's no reason to have another currency. We just went through a financial crisis. Part of the reason for the financial crisis, in my mind, was we had this type of money that you can print out of thin air, which is what I was thinking you could do with cryptocurrency. You can print them out of thin air. Why do we need that again? What we need is, quote, sound money, where essentially you would have something that was intrinsic value, and even if you couldn't use it as immediate exchange, you could use it as a store of value. I've always viewed gold and silver that way. I've not viewed them as some type of return to a standard where you're walking around trading in gold and silver, because that's inefficient. And one of the reasons that I didn't even like Bitcoin was I thought I can just as easily walk around with a credit card, debit card, and transact that way. Why would I want to add one more method of payment, meaning the Bitcoin, especially where I'd be limited in using it? Very few places took it at the time. Very few places still take it currently. So I was not a big fan of it, and I was convinced that when the price crashed in 2013, that we had seen the end of it. This was it. No more Bitcoin. It was a stupid idea. Very clever, but I figured it's gone. Good riddance. And I patted myself on the back for being so smart, for having identified all the flaws of Bitcoin. Well, I didn't just give up on it at that point. I started looking into it because it didn't go away. The price had been hammered, but it didn't go away. And I was surprised that people were not convinced of my way of thinking and would say, look, why are we bothering with this stupidity? I mean, this is just a bunch of numbers. Why do we keep working on it? But I was very impressed with the fact that, and I actually thought they were foolish for continuing to work on Bitcoin and then come out with altcoins, which weren't really big at the time in 2013, 14. You had a couple, you had Dogecoin, you had Litecoin. And then I started figuring and thinking about what would happen. How are they going to regulate this? This is before they came out with that Bitcoin was a commodity. This was before the SEC really had any point of view on it. And I started to write articles on how the government could clamp down on this if they so chose, and what different agencies of the government would be involved, whether it be the Fed, whether it be the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, whether it be the CFTC, and how they would probably regulate. I wasn't thinking they would try to outright ban it, but I also thought they probably wouldn't really care because it wasn't going to be that big. And all during 2013-14, I covered the regulatory issues of it, and the price just meandered and did nothing. But I kept seeing how there was money going into the system, and there were some big names that were investing in it, investing in projects, and I thought, why are they doing this? This isn't going to be around much longer. I mean, the thing was $1,000, it's $200. Why are they, spitting in the wind here, wasting time? I said, oh, well, maybe they're just taking a flyer on it, in case it turns out to be. You see that all the time in venture capital. You see in Silicon Valley invest in something. And I know that venture capitalists, their mentality is you throw a lot of stuff around, you really don't know. So you make like 50 investments and you only expect 2 or 3 of them to hit. So I thought that's probably the mentality. But then in 2017, Bitcoin started to rise, altcoins started to rise, and you had that massive bubble. And also before that, I think in 2017, earlier, maybe it was 2016, you had the Indian government decide that they were going to demonetize their rupees. They called them all in overnight. The entire country's money supply was very similar to what FDR did. Overnight, he said, you got to turn in the gold coins. He didn't say you have to. He essentially took the country's gold supply, monetary supply, and said you got to turn them in, which was different than when in 1934, and I've done a YouTube and a blog post on this, in 1934 when FDR issued a similar executive order saying you got to turn in your silver, but it wasn't because he wanted people to turn in their silver coins. He actually wanted people to turn in their silver so they could make coins. Long story short, it's because they had a silver coin shortage because in 1918, pursuant to the Pittman Act, they melted down nearly half of the Morgan silver dollars and shipped them to India, who needed to ship them to England to ship them to India, who had a silver shortage because they owned running that country and they needed the silver to make the rupees. And as a result, from like 1918 to 1934, the United States had no silver left to make coins, and that's why those coins minted during that era are relatively rare, other than the silver dollars, because they didn't have enough silver to make them. And finally, by 1934, there was a Silver Act, and they went out and they acquired massive amounts of silver, and then they started minting silver coins again. Anyway, the point is, in 1933, with the Gold Confiscation Act, that was basically telling the people, your gold is no longer money, in the sense that it's not going to be a $10 coin, a $5 coin, a $1 coin, $20 coin. You got to turn them in. And that is what President Modi, or Prime Minister Modi, did in India. He said those rupee notes that you have, you got to turn them in. They're no good anymore. And that's all of a sudden when I said to myself, I had always compared Bitcoin to fiat in the sense that they're both backed by nothing. I know you go on about what people think they're backed by and the network effect and the payment system and governments are backed by guns and what. Putting that aside, there's no actual intrinsic value backing them. And then people argue, oh no, but the network is... There's nothing one-to-one relationship backing any fiat currency or any cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. And that's when I said to myself, well, wait a minute. Bitcoin itself cannot be recalled in that fashion. So now I can see why somebody might want to hold a Bitcoin as opposed to a rupee. Because the president of Bitcoin can't go on TV and say, tomorrow night your Bitcoin's not worth anything. I mean, a government can try to say that, but it doesn't actually detract from the fact that he or she cannot determine that the value of the Bitcoin is not worth anything. Or basically what the Prime Minister said was that those rupees that were then in circulation would no longer have any value whatsoever unless you turned them in and got new ones. That's when I kind of thought, okay, well, not necessarily warming to the idea of an unbacked currency, but warming to the idea that if you're going to have something that is digital and unbacked, well, I'd rather have the one that can't be recalled on a moment's notice or can't be pulled out of my bank account just because they want to take it out of your bank account or they can't stop payment on it, whereas they can with a national currency. So I started to think, okay, there's some value there. I'm not sure it's worth whatever the price of Bitcoin was at the time, but I started to see that if it's easy to transact in Bitcoin and they can't recall it, that's a plus, because like the rupee may be easy to transact in unless Prime Minister Modi decides to go on TV and says you can't transact in that anymore, so you got to turn them in. But what struck me the most during that time, when the price rose in 2017, a lot of money poured into, again, more projects. And we saw companies making announcements, big companies, Wall Street companies pouring money into it. And I said, well, that makes sense. Thing is going up. They think it's going to be adopted. Okay. When the price fell, I thought, well, that's it. It's over. But this time I knew better. I knew from the 2013 experience it wasn't over. It wasn't even close. In 2018, more money poured into Bitcoin-related projects. You had massive ICOs in 2017, but the institutional money really came in 2018 with the announcement of Bakkt, which is the New York Stock Exchange, owned by Intercontinental Exchange formed an alliance with Microsoft, Boston Consulting, and Starbucks to launch a very ambitious Bitcoin trading platform, storage solution, and ability to convert your Bitcoins into spendable fiat. You had Van Eck make an announcement that they wanted ETFs. You had 8 or 10 other large companies have show an interest and file with the SEC to have a Bitcoin ETF. Fidelity, largest privately held company that does trading, $2.1 trillion of assets under management, announced that they are going to do a crypto trading platform. They'd announced in 2017 that they had already integrated their platform with Coinbase, where you can view your Coinbase account on your Fidelity account. TD Ameritrade announced that they were getting into it. Goldman Sachs invested in Circle and Poloniex. NASDAQ announced that they were going to do futures. The CME Group, the CBO Group, also launched futures at the end of 2017. And that's when I realized that this is not going to go away. And you would think that in this bear market, but I didn't think this because I had the lesson from 2013, the impressive thing about the Bitcoin space or the crypto space is no matter what you think about it, money continues to pour in, massive amounts of money. And the price, in a sense, doesn't matter. So, for example, another example, not just the main companies that I mentioned, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, Van Eck, New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, all promoting big crypto projects, Goldman Sachs with Circle and Poloniex and trading platforms and investment in stable coins, that it doesn't stop. And that means they, in my mind, want to make money off of this. You wouldn't invest in setting up all this infrastructure because they expect it to go away. Now, another example was the number of Bitcoin ATMs over the last year has skyrocketed. You would think that they would have gone down in 2018. They'll say, get that Bitcoin machine out of my store. Hasn't happened. In fact, Bitcoin transactions right now are very close to an all-time high. The hash rate is very close as well. It's not like it's gone away. The price has gone down, but the interest in it has not. There has been some... In fact, they say in December last year, the trading volumes were near records. Now, here's just an example of moving into the mainstream. Before we even get into Bitcoin ATMs, Coinstar, they announced a relationship with CoinMe, who runs Bitcoin ATMs as well, that they're going to offer the ability of people to buy up to $2,500 a pop with cash, not with coins. It's interesting, their business is coins, to buy Bitcoin on at these self-service shops. And that's a very big deal because the ubiquity of the Coinstar machines, there's 20,000 of them, people will start to buy it out of curiosity. And then, of course, the companies and the supermarkets and the convenience stores that have these machines are obviously going to be incentivized to accept the Bitcoin because they sold the Bitcoin there and they made the money off of having the machine in the store. They might as well take whatever value they have, people have in their wallets, back. That is a very big adoptive thing. And that is happening even though we have this bear market where the price of Bitcoin is falling from $20,000 all the way down to $3,000. But in some other big news today, we see, for example, BitLicense. Now, what's a BitLicense? It's basically you got to know someone in New York State to get yourself a BitLicense, and it's basically a license to print money, because unless you have a BitLicense and a money transmitter license, you can't do much with cryptocurrencies. And guess who has BitLicenses in New York already? Circle, who owns Circle. Goldman Sachs has a partial ownership interest in Circle. Also, the other one is Square, which is Jack Dorsey's payment system. They've got a license there. The Winklevoss twins, the multi-billion dollar twins, their Genesis Global Trading has a BitLicense. And now, who has one but a company called Robinhood? Robinhood, Very big deal. Robin, as you may remember, opened up last February with this no-fee trading for stocks and cryptocurrencies, but they weren't allowed to do it in New York. Well, now they have this license. They'll do it in New York. And again, talking about the money that goes in there, Robinhood raised $360 million last year, or I think it was last year, and they're looking to do an IPO. Coinbase looking to do an IPO has also raised hundreds of millions of dollars. So many companies in this space have raised hundreds of millions of dollars and put hundreds of millions of dollars into things like stable coins, platforms, trading platforms, storage solutions, and so on. So the New York Financial Regulatory Group granted the BIT license to Robinhood. Big deal. And now they're going to have no fee trading of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bcash, and Litecoin. That's all going to start up in February. New York's a big market. Third largest state in the country after Texas and California in terms of population. Used to be first. Also, another company got a bit like LibertyX. They have a very interesting model. They have the ability to go through thousands of point-of-sale companies, and you can buy your Bitcoin through them. You get like a PIN from LibertyX. It's kind of a clunky procedure, but you go on LibertyX site, you get your PIN, you go to the merchant. He's set up to take it. You give him the cash, and the merchant then stamps your thing, and you go back to the website and you collect your Bitcoin. But again, allowing that to happen in New York is a big deal. Why? Because New York has got a lot of population. So all this is happening irrespective of the fact that we are not having any rise or interest in cryptocurrencies as the price falls down, but we're seeing the infrastructure built out. Now, Bitcoin ATMs, this is most recent, I just checked this before we came on. In the US, 2,541 of 4,216 global Bitcoin ATMs. That is more than double the amount at this time last year. Very big deal because, again, the more ubiquitous these things come, people just get used to having them around. Eventually, they use them. I remember back in 2005 working at a company, and it was a question, have you ever watched a video online? And 32% said they had. Now, if you ask that question today, it's a stupid question. Everyone has watched a video online. Right now, if you ask somebody, have you ever bought Bitcoin online? It'd be probably a very small percentage. At some point, maybe might not be. Another thing, this guy Novogratz, egg all over his face. He was a big Bitcoin proponent. Price fell. Now he's looking to raise $250 million to do crypto loans. Again, infrastructure, spending a lot of money, moving money into setting up infrastructure. What else do we have? This is all just the last couple of days here. Now, you know that Ohio has already agreed to accept through a payment processor called, I think it's called BitPay. Ohio is now accepting Bitcoin as a medium of paying for taxes. That was another one of the big reasons why Bitcoin was never going to go anywhere. You can't pay your taxes with it. Well, you can now in Ohio. New Hampshire now pitching same thing. New crypto tax payments bill in New Hampshire, and that'll probably go through. I think that would go in effect in 2020, and the bill would require state agencies to accept cryptocurrencies as payment for fees and taxes. And again, the advantage to the state to doing this, say, why would they do this? It competes with the dollar. No, it doesn't compete with the dollar. It competes with the payment processors. It competes with MasterCard. They have to pay a fee to the processor, to MasterCard. You can pay your taxes in credit card, but MasterCard doesn't care that you're the federal government or the state. They're still going to charge you. But if you pay via a Bitcoin or something like that, then the fee is much less. So, speaking of MasterCard, there was news today. There wasn't much information about it, but this is no big deal. MasterCard agrees to pay 570 million euros, which is about $650 million. Didn't even say for what. And they'll just take a charge in the fourth quarter of 2018. You know, just almost $1 billion in fines. Think about how much money runs through MasterCard, runs through PayPal. That is a target on their back. One of the things about the free market is if somebody makes monopoly profits, you want to dethrone them. Why? So you can make monopoly profits. And that's why I came up with the analogy of Blockbuster versus Netflix. Netflix realized that the way to attack Blockbuster wasn't to go out, raise $20 billion, and put a storefront everywhere that Blockbuster was and try to run them out of business. They might have been successful doing that, and if they were, then they would have reaped the benefits of what Blockbuster had, but it would have cost them a fortune, and they might not have been able to pull it off. How did they attack Blockbuster instead? By mailing people DVDs and eliminating the late fee. My analogy is, same thing can happen with Bitcoin with the help of Bitcoin processors. They can nail MasterCard and convince merchants that it's a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and they've already convinced Ohio, and they're probably going to convince New Hampshire that you should just accept the Bitcoin, and that would be a reason for people to actually go out and get Bitcoin because they may get a deal from a merchant. Could happen quickly, could not happen at all, but again, I try to think through these things not as what I want to happen, but as what I think could happen based on my analysis. So people think I just get on there and yell, game over and game changer. And that's how I appear to the people who mindlessly follow these Bitcoin, these gold and silver pumpers. I don't. I actually analyze it. They're the ones who just listen to the same narrative and then get annoyed when they hear something different. Now, let's move on now from all this, what's happening, and talk about the impact of the government shutdown on cryptocurrencies. Now, keep in mind, there's one component of cryptocurrencies that have nothing to do with government. The idea that they're peer-to-peer, they really should be unregulated. It's got nothing to do with government. But for part of it is to bring the big money in, and the government wants to bring the money in. They want to tax and trace their Wall Street clientele. Their big money wants there to be regulation because that gives them an advantage. Because when you regulate something and you're big enough to pay the regulatory fee, as we've seen with the New York Bit license, right? If you're a big company, you can come in, you've raised a lot of money, like Robinhood, $360 million, you're going to do an IPO. You go to Andrew Cuomo's office and you say, hey, I need one of those Bit licenses. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And you get it, okay? So there is that element of the Bitcoin infrastructure. And again, there's people in the Bitcoin maximalists and the Bitcoin and the Fed and the world, and everyone's going to be their own central banker. Okay. Part of, and you can still do all that, even if they put all this regulation in place, but it may not be that Bitcoin is any type of central bank killer or any type of killer. It could just be, it gives you the freedom to do what you want on the side, provided you don't do money laundering or use your Bitcoin for illicit purposes or tax evasion. Sure, you can operate on your own, but a lot of it is going to be brought in to the payment system because there's a lot of money to be made there, and it is an ideal solution to attack that monopoly of MasterCard and PayPal and the processing system, in addition to being censorship proof, meaning that, you know, how Patreon can kick you off, they can seize your bank account, they can stop processing payments like they did to InfoWars, Alex Jones. They can't do that with Bitcoin because there is no central Bitcoin guy or woman or CEO or somebody who can make a decision that you're not allowed. You're not allowed to have anything to do with Bitcoin. Now, having said all of that about how the large Wall Street companies are trying to get themselves embedded into regulation so they can sell to their institutional clients who are all subject to regulations. There was a Bitcoin ETF. VanEck was one of the most recent ones. They had probably the best shot at getting it done. They recently withdrew their Bitcoin ETF, but as the CEO of VanEck, I think his name is VanEck, said on one of those CNBC talk shows, they pulled it because of the shutdown. It's temporarily withdrawn, but they're going to be working with regulators and major market participants to build appropriate market structure frameworks, and they think eventually they'll get it through, and probably will help them. They're probably better off having backed BAKKT, the New York Stock Exchange, Microsoft, Starbucks deal in place and operating before they can get their Bitcoin ETF approved. But that's also probably held up from CFTC points because the government is closed at the moment. So I don't think any of this it's not really a roadblock, it's just a temporary slowdown. But remember, all these other things are happening in the crypto space while the government is shut down. Now, what does this one say here? Yeah, this is just the same thing. Government shutdown derailed Bitcoin ETF talks, says Van Eck, CEO. Bitcoin proposal was pulled due to government shutdown. So we know that already. Let's see how else the shutdown has been impacting. I think that's it. Yeah, there's one other thing that I wanted to mention. Lightning Network, again. This all goes on irrespective of the price of Bitcoin. Lightning Network briefly enables Bitcoin to scale, enables the transaction to happen without having to be verified first on the blockchain. It happens off the blockchain and then gets recorded to the blockchain. And this gentleman here, Armin van Bitcoin, says, Lightning Network universe keeps expanding at an exponential rate. And again, I put in parentheses, irrespective of the price the last year. Nodes 5,500, channels 20,800, capacity $2 million US. That's not a big deal, but it's growing. And eventually, if the enthusiasm is still there and there's a reason to do it, then the infrastructure continues to be built out. Okay, well, I think now, last time, sorry, I jumped off. I showed you all you needed to know with that chart. I got off. We didn't have our normal discussion. I think we're going to cover whatever you guys are talking about in the comments now. First, let me put up the, there we go. There's your Smaulgld mugs. Remember, there's no Google AdWords, no YouTube ads on this channel. And the channel is funded entirely by donations, Bitcoin, Litecoin, PayPal, Patreon, and by the purchase of Smaulgld mugs, either from Smaulgld.com, where I ship them out directly. That is the Smaulgld Classic and Super Classic mugs. They're shipped priority mail. It's a good bargain. It actually looks expensive, but not when you take into account that the shipping is 2-day shipping, and it's cheaper than if you bought the mugs, the other mugs, from the Zazzle store, and you certainly get them a lot quicker. Although the prices on those are good too. It's just that you may think, oh, well, it's only $17.99 for the mug over there, whatever you're looking at, or $18.99, and here's $23. Yeah, but once you add your shipping in over there, and I don't think they do priority shipping for the way I do it, and I deliver them by hand. I'm not arguing to buy from me or from Zad. They're both from me. I'm just saying that you may think that buying from me is more expensive. The classic and super classic mugs. It's not, and you can't buy the classic or super classic mugs at the Smaulgld store. You can only buy them from Smaulgld.com. All right, let's see what you guys are saying. And so get your orders ready. I will go again tomorrow to the post office and ship whatever you might happen to order. And you can pay through Bitcoin, Litecoin. If you want to pay through Bitcoin or Litecoin, just shoot me an email, smaulgld@gmail.com. Tell me you're sending it, and then we'll hook you up. Otherwise, you can just there's a way of doing a PayPal directly on the site from Smaulgld to buy those mugs. If you want to sign up for Patreon, it's very simple as well. PayPal. Okay, let's see what you guys are saying. Well, get over there. Also, you can buy gold and silver through the site. Again, not an investment advice, but that's what you want to do. You can buy through Golden Eagle Coin, Money Metals Exchange, and SD Bullion. And Smaulgld makes a small commission if you do indeed buy through those links. So if you're interested, please check them out. Now, prior to coming on, we had Roger Henley of the notorious Smaulgld Hyperclassic plastic mug. He has decided that he cannot or will not buy a Smaulgld mug and incur the massive shipping charges that come from the United States to Australia. So he decided to make a mug himself. And not only did he make a mug himself, he made a mug of him out and about in his homeland in Australia, feeding kangaroos with his Smaulgld Hyperclassic plastic knockoff mug. And he actually unveiled for us some very important hidden news that actually the Perth Mint does not mine gold or silver, but they actually get their gold and silver from feeding particular animals specific to or indigenous to Australia called the rubot. And he fed his rubot some food with the Smaulgld Hyperclassic mug. Now, the Hyperclassic mug is a plastic. Now, he claims that is a high-tech advantage. It really isn't. In fact, I think he was saying that the temperature in Australia was well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit today, and I suspect that hyperclassic mug is going to melt in such temperatures, whereas a classic or super classic Smaulgld ceramic mug is going to withhold and uphold itself much better than a piece of trash like this you see here. Smaulgld cryptocurrency. Now he's also made, Roger has made one what we think is going to help sales. He's added a Q code to the back of his latest Smaulgld hyper classic mug. You can see it's very cheap. It probably is. This one, if he brought it outside today, is probably melted. Now he says he's going to make another video. We await that video, but you can see the difference between a Smaulgld hyper classic cheap knockoff mug compared to, I mean, this type of mug. Mugs are undervalued. That's number 16. Mugs cannot go to zero. Look at the classic. Look at those compared to that sorry looking plastic thing that Roger has made. Okay. Let's move on from the pre-comments to what you guys said. Well, De La Ville came, Pablo Pena came, and Holloman came, and Emily York is back again. Jack is also here. So everyone is here. Pablo Pena, let's see. What do we got here? Jack AG says, Bitcoin market acting funny. You funny too. When things aren't fluctuating rapidly, I feel strange. I kind of like bear crypto markets. Time to accumulate. Okay. Prashanti girl is here from down under. She got no notification. Yep. You see, I'm going to go on the conspiracy theory. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all social media platforms are against Smaulgld because he speaks the truth. And they're just trying to knock me down. But Ann Holloman contradicts that theory because she's getting notifications. And maybe it's that YouTube is conspiring against Prashanti girl and not sending her notifications. All right. Jack AG. Small. That's my new nickname. Small. I like small. Small, tall, Paul, tall, small. Okay, but I'm not tall. Someone brought up a good point today. Where do you cash your gold in a collapse? It depends on what the collapse is, right? They said sugar was more valuable than gold in a collapse. That is true. Depends on in a total collapse, the gold is worthless. Because what you want, and that's why this Venezuela is, oh, you have Venezuela. No. In a total collapse, there's not much to buy. And what you want to buy in a collapse are necessities. So if you have necessities, as you're pointing out, Jack, like sugar, someone will barter with you for your sugar. Only somebody with warehouses worth of stuff is going to exchange that for gold. Because most people aren't going to have enough of the necessities. There may be enough of the necessities in a community where someone has oatmeal and someone has sugar and someone has whiskey and someone has rye, but you're going to need to trade that stuff. If you're not sure when the collapse is going to, or the crisis is going to end, acquiring gold, you're not going to eat. You're not going to drink. You're not going to protect yourself. The more important things in a total collapse are going to be means of protection. They're going to be, I mean, a set of playing cards would be more valuable. So that's why I don't understand why people, they want the collapse to happen because they think they're somehow going to be better off. Okay. Pablo Pena, Smaulgld, shadow ban Australia on behalf of the fake hyper super classic mug. Yes, I should delete. I'm too good buddies with Roger, but I should actually. And you can't even do it. If I were to take him off, he'd be gone forever. I did that once to somebody by mistake. You click on. I'm not going to do it. I was going to click on the thing. If you put hide user, it's very hard to get. I don't think they can come back, so I'm not going to do that. All right. Scott Wardell, Rubot at fault. I like Ann. She always tells everyone listening to like the video. That's very important. Last night, I got a record number of dislikes. They were very, very upset. I got like 20 dislikes for my, I think, it wasn't a game-changing chart, but it was all you need to know. I had everything on there other than the Shemitah and the central banks are buying gold, but I gave all the reasons that you should be buying gold or silver and why it was set to skyrocket. And I gave them, I try to put them in in the timeline so you get context. Since 2011, those are the main reasons, and that's what they keep saying. COMEX default, silver shortage, all there. They were very upset. AG, Pablo, with cash will buy your gold or trades. Yeah. Scott Verdell says, uh-oh, at minute 11 for the shenanigans of Congress, all that they do is Moronica. Yeah, I didn't really have Moronica today. I mean, there's something stupid that happens every day. I used to do a weekly show, and sometimes I wouldn't get to it, and then I have to do a catch-up show 2 weeks later, and it would take like an hour. But if everyone is hungry, you can't eat gold. That is true. Shanty Girl, LOL Jack, you can't eat your car either, touche. But you can eat your horse. Not that I advise that or even encourage that. So horses are transportation, period. And you can eat a horse. So you can have 10 ounces of gold. Does that mean 10 meals? Maybe not. Trade for farmland, says Pablo Pina. See, it's important whether infrastructure still exists. Once infrastructure is gone, gold is useless. Silver is useless. If you have infrastructure and you just have a financial depression, then you'd be fine. I mean, I guess if you had, well, you couldn't have it during the Depression gold because they took it from you. But if you had wealth stored during a depression and there was deflation, you were fine. It wasn't like goods and services weren't being produced in the 1930s during the Depression. They were. And there were people who were very rich during the 30s, and they were not impacted at all. Tossing Molotovs. Does the GDX and the like prices tend to precede the actual gold price? I think it does. Might be useful analysis. I used to do a lot of analysis on that. I've just given up trying to track the miners with the gold. They have, to a certain extent, they have decoupled in the last couple of years. Buggers. It's an English word. Eli is here. I haven't seen Eli in a bit. Jack. AG. I hope everyone here has 6 months of food and water. Collapse or no collapse, stagflation is just as devastating as a sudden crash. Well, the reason you should have 6 months of food and water collapse may have nothing to do with finances. It could have to do with an EMP. It could have to do with a local, I don't know, something goes off in your area. You can have natural disasters in your area. It's definitely good to have. That's actually more important to have. People spend less time talking about prepping, and that gets a bad. I don't know why. To me, prepping makes total sense. Buying gold and silver there's a limit how much I think you should be buying, because it's really appealing to greed, because in an absolute disaster scenario, you're better off having real stuff, not something you can buy stuff with, because people may not know what silver or gold is even about, wouldn't even care. I mean, if you have hot chocolate packets, that's probably what somebody might want if they've got kids, and they may give you they may give you something for it, and that's probably a better thing. Gold and silver are money when you have a functioning society. They actually facilitated civilization. That's why they use gold and silver. When you guys are all, not you guys, but the people that don't listen to this channel talking about collapse, they're talking about like Mad Max. There's no need for civilized money then. You just need to have your weapons and your provisions. It's only in a civilization, in a non-collapse, that gold and silver actually become money. And I would argue today that there are better medium of exchanges today. Clearly, digital medium of exchanges are better because you can transact with a far larger number of people. You don't have to lug this stuff around. That's my horses are transportation period argument, that horses used to be transportation because they were the best means of transportation. But today, horses are still valuable, but not as transportation. You can use them as transportation, but people have them now as pets, status symbols, or to race them around in a circle so people can bet on them. The same with gold and silver. They're still valuable. They're not valuable as a medium of exchange. No, well, they're money, period. Okay. Now, silver is a byproduct, BUY, says Jack, of mining of of other metals. If there's no desire for copper anymore due to slow economy, silver also becomes scarce. Yes, because 70% of silver mining is a byproduct of silver, of copper, lead, zinc, tin. Even gold mining produces some silver. If we go back to the Dark Ages, Pablo says gold will shine. Yes, if you truly go back to the Dark Ages where it's going to take 50 years to reinvent the wheel, to reinvent everything, that eventually gold will be reestablished as a preferred medium of exchange, assuming no electricity, no wheels. Eventually, if people stop beating each other over the head with clubs and rocks, then yes, gold will. But that's not a reason to buy gold. Okay. China not good unless you want to be judged by how many times you pass gas a day and then tax for it, says Scott. A person I spoke to was very anti-gold and anti-Bitcoin, says Jack. And anti-hedges, he thinks $1 will one day rise to the top. I don't know if Bitcoin is a hedge. That I'm not convinced of that. I think Bitcoin is a perhaps superior medium of exchange if they can solve the scaling thing and they can make transactions cheaper. And if people still value Bitcoin, well, then that's a valuable thing. I don't know if that's a hedge. Gold is a hedge. I'm not sure silver is a hedge, though. I think gold is historically a hedge. But again, who knows what's going to happen? Depends on what type of what you're hedging against. Pablo Pina, but what China and Russia are doing, the crumbling of the petrodollar and big debts, is being obvious to other power nations. Pablo, haven't you been listening to my theory on the petrodollar? How that's less important today? I'm not going to go through it tonight, but maybe I can jar your memory on that one. That countries hold dollars far in excess of the amount that they need to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, which is supposedly the underpinning of the petrodollar. Also, the United States is far tighter with Saudi Arabia now the last year than they've been in decades, given that they've ditched the Iran deal. Remember, Iran and Saudi Arabia are mortal enemies, and the United States clearly has taken Saudi Arabia's side, is totally against Iran under the Trump administration, and the United States gave Saudi Arabia a total pass on that Khashoggi incident. And the United States now produces more oil than Saudi Arabia. So couple all that with the fact that countries now have dollars not just to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, but they still need dollars to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. But now they also need dollars to buy oil from the United States and natural gas from the United States. So this whole end of the petrodollar thing is a non-event in my mind. Like, someone can debate it with me, but I haven't heard a good argument against it other than people just repeating what they've heard the last 10 years about end of the petrodollar. Thanks, Lewis. Chart is readable. It was readable last night. You had mentioned that you couldn't read it, but I saw it. I don't know. Tossing Molotovs. That chart is nothing more than plotting pumpers' polemics applied to time. That's a nice alliteration there. I think it's great. That is what those are. I don't know what people were mad about. Those are the things that they told us were the reasons gold were to go higher. I didn't put words in anyone's mouth. I didn't even say which mouths they came from. Those have been repeated by everybody. Those are the reasons. Shemitah, I really feel bad. I left out Shemitah, and central banks are buying gold. Those are the reasons. People got annoyed. I guess they realized, oh, those reasons didn't work over the last 9 years. Unusual vibes. Mix it up. Smaulgld. Andrew, buy blank online. Smouts. Pablo Pina, is there more Bitcoin ATMs than actual brick and mortar places to use them? No. No, there's only 4,200 ATMs. And I would say any ATM, it's very, I think people don't realize how easy it is to set up I accept Bitcoin. It's not hard to do at all. You just set up an account, and now the Bitcoin, I'll show you. I had that every time I put it up. Johnny Litecoin shows up, and he sends me some to show how easy it is, and I forget to thank him because I go back to my account and say, oh, who sent me that? It must have been Johnny Litecoin. It's so easy. I have it as a merchant setup. It goes in to my Coinbase account, and there it sits. I know when I got it, and I just don't know who, unless they leave me a note, I don't know who sent it to me. But that's the point. It can be sent very easily. And here, I'll show you. It's not like Smaulgld is some multinational operation that spent months figuring out some type of payment system in order to get to accept Bitcoin and Litecoin. There it is. It's right there. If you have a Loaf wallet for Litecoin or any other Bitcoin wallet, you just open up your wallet and you say send, and then you hold the phone up to the screen and you send me Bitcoin or Litecoin. So to me, it wouldn't make any sense. First of all, every major online coin dealer, AppMex takes Bitcoin. It's very easy to do. It doesn't require any real work. And someone was asking the other day, how are you going to integrate it into your accounting system? It's very simple. The processor processes the Bitcoin. If you buy 10 Silver Eagles for, I don't know, $189, whatever they're worth, you get paid $189. You just don't pay the MasterCard fee. So you book that you got $189. You may want to put a note that it came through a payment processor and it was a crypto transaction, but there's no, it's all accounted for and it all runs through and it's very easy. It's not hard to do. Jack, for everyone, how did fiat get started? All right, I won't answer this one, even if I know the answer. Well, the government issued and accepted it. If the government accepts Bitcoin to pay your taxes, it started again. No. That's not true. Jack? That's from Midnight Run. If the government accepts a form of payment, that is not saying that it's legal tender. And that is not saying that you must use the legal tender issued by the sovereign. They're just saying, if they took gold, that wouldn't make gold fiat. So I think, Jack, that's incorrect. I will watch Shirley Jones and her horse. I don't know what that is about. What about an EMP? What about an EMP? My silver is hard to store and move. Yeah, if you have a lot of it, that's for sure. Yes, if you had an EMP, you would miss the Smaulgld live stream. But remember, Smaulgld would have a backup satellite. Start with cryptos by getting a Coinbase account. The know your customer stuff is a pain. It takes time. Yes, but once you have, you're right, because I set up the Coinbase account and you send them photographs and all that other stuff. But once you have the account, the way I set up the stores, I just hit a button and they create it for you. Once they know who you are, then it's not an issue. Now, the other thing you can do is you can bypass Coinbase altogether. I have it through Coinbase just so I can keep track of it. But all you have to do is you can buy cryptos on a non-centralized exchange. You have your own wallet, and you can send it to somebody else who's the same way. And there is no... Now, I think they frown on that, and that's why I think it was Shapeshift or Local Bitcoin. They went ahead and added all the know your customer stuff to it. You guys are talking to yourself, all right. Bitcoin. Pablo, I've been hearing the process speed per transaction is not the best speed. It's not bad. I mean, the Litecoin goes instantaneous. There was a thing the other day I was seeing somebody was sent 2 Bitcoins overseas. It took a minute. There was issues with it a while back, but a lot of that's been alleviated through SegWit, and then they've got Bcash with the bigger blocks. It's not like you have to wait around for 3 years for it. Yeah, it's not the best speed, but safe, says Jack. All right. Yes, Ann is saying Lightning Networks is a second layer that allows for faster transactions, but as a practical matter, it's not really used yet very much. Jack, I'm so suspicious of those Bitcoin ATMs. Well, you should be. They have very high fees. Who's running the show? Well, that's the other issue is, yes, who owns those machines and what are they doing with them? Coinstar's moving into that, though. There's John Moore. I have to check my Coinbase account right now. He might have heard me, and he might have sent me more Litecoin. John is a Litecoin promoter and proponent. Yes, indeed. Okay. Here he says, Easy to spend Litecoin. Tell me an item you want, and I will show you an online merchant that sells and accepts Litecoin for payment. Yes, it's far from ubiquitous, but it's not like no. When I see these articles written by no coiners, no one's using Bitcoin, no one's using Litecoin, that's not true at all. That is definitely not true. In fact, BitPay said that they processed $1 billion worth of transactions. Now, that's not people sending Coinbase to their own wallet or just moving stuff around. That's actual transactions that they process. That's a lot of money. I mean, it's nothing in the grand scheme of things, but it's $1 billion. Yes, you can buy almost anything. John Moore, good topic. I got a repair guy here. Check back in later. Okay. Systemic failure. I think I'm going to wrap it up here unless I see a killer game-changing comment. Wow, accepting Bitcoin for tax revenue. Yes, indeed they are. Open-end sticks. They have Bitcoin on them. That I know. The guy who bought my silver didn't believe in crypto. Well, see, this is... Before I get off, I'll make one last point about this. People will make a determination that unless something is universally accepted, it has no value. And that's why I love my Jackson Pollock analogy. Most people don't like Jackson Pollock. Most people don't like modern art. Most people don't like Juan Miro. Most people don't like a lot of stuff. That doesn't mean they don't have value. I don't like sauerkraut. Actually, I do. But if I didn't like it, that wouldn't mean that sauerkraut should be free because no one wants it or very few people like it. Bitcoin doesn't have to be accepted worldwide for it to have value. Jackson Pollocks don't have to be universally admired for them to have value. I make this point a lot. I don't think people... It took me a while. This is my own way of understanding value. It's the same in dating. Some people don't like the look of somebody and other people do. Beauty of the eye of the beholder, all that kind of stuff. It's not like everything is everything to everyone. Bitcoin can have value even if it doesn't become widely accepted. It doesn't have to. Gold has value, and in the United States, no one cares about it. Silver has a price per ounce, barely, but very few people own it. All right, what else do we got here? Yeah, I think we're done. Let's see. I'm a vegan, no horse for me, she says, of course. Pablo Pina, don't get me interested in a hyperclassic mug. It's not going to happen. And by the way, Roger left. He was here early. And he's not here. All right. Well, I'm going to thank everyone for joining me tonight. And did I miss anything? DeVille says, nothing like starting your day with a Smaulgld mug. Yes, that is true. That is definitely true. All right, well, get your Smaulgld mugs. I will go to the post office tomorrow and mail any orders out. I don't have any at the moment, but I clearly will mail tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone, and thanks for listening. And again, we will see you tomorrow. Buenas noches, buona notte, guten Abend, bonne nuit, good night, and gut Yule. All right.